Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. It's finally time to finish up my update 1.46 car reviews, this time with perhaps the most requested car of the update and probably the only good long-term bet from 1.46. Of course, I'm talking about the Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454 from 1970. An absolute legendary car finally returns in Gran Turismo 7 in all its glory and detail. So as always with these car reviews, let's start off with the price point. So the Chevelle is certainly not going to break the bank. Costing a measly 163,000 credits, this is a relatively cheap legendary vehicle. In terms of the stats, the PP rating is 472.64. Displacement is a whopping 7,443cc. Drivetrain is FR. Max power is a whopping 449 brake horsepower from a car from 1970. Weight is on the heavy side at 1762 kilograms, and then obviously of course the aspiration is naturally aspirated. Overall, not too bad in terms of the stats. However, that is going to lead me into my first criticism of this vehicle, and it's not really about the car itself, but more aimed at polyphony when it comes to the tyre compound chosen for the SS. This is clearly a big, beefy American muscle car, putting a lot of horsepower down almost instantly. It's insanely quick. However, Polyphony decided that a great compound of tyre for this car would be comfort mediums, which are absolutely terrible and just cannot handle the stock power that this car puts out. Don't be surprised the first time that you jump in the Chevelle that you find it almost undrivable. Even I did. I was shocked at just how bad this car was straight out of the box, and then I realised the fact that it's running on comfort mediums. Even if we take one of the more recent classic American muscle cars additions to Gran Turismo 7, the Dodge Charger, that thing ran on comfort softs as default tyres, and to be honest it just made it much more drivable out the box. Again, this whole random tyre choice by Polyphony just seems really baffling at times with certain cars, and I feel like it's the exact same here for the Chevy Chevelle. Even just going that compound above to the softs would have just made this a much better car straight out the box, especially for someone like me that is a bit of a sucker to be a collector for these classic American cars, where I kind of want a standard and then obviously I want the modified versions as well. I don't really want to have to be tweaking too much. So out of the box, just don't be surprised if this car is almost undrivable. It is just purely the compound of tyre. There's nothing wrong with the game or anything like that, or your own skill level. It is probably just the fact that those comfort mediums are absolutely terrible for a car putting out that much horsepower and accelerating just that quick. So with that out of the way and done with, let's talk about the car itself. Now, if you've never joined me for a road car review in Gran Turismo 7, I will take the completely standard version for a hot lap around the Nordschleife, and we'll see where it ranks on the lap time leaderboard. During that section of the video, I'll talk about the standard version and how it feels in game. We will then go the complete opposite side and going for a fully upgraded highest performance point possible version and lap it around the high speed ring, once again talking about that version and seeing where it ranks on our modified leaderboard. So the Chevy Chevelle SS finally enters Gran Turismo 7, and this is one I've been excited for ever since I saw it on that leaked car list. So maybe this is just a me thing, but I feel like the Chevy Chevelle during the sort of mid 2000s to late 2000s was very prominent in racing games. I feel like it was pretty much absolutely everywhere. I have massive fond memories of this car from earlier Gran Turismo titles, as well as I believe it was the likes of Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition, where I just used it absolutely religiously. I feel like during that time period the Chevy Chevelle was absolutely everywhere. You couldn't really have a racing game that featured classic American muscle cars without actually seeing the Chevy Chevelle SS. I feel like then from the sort of like the 2010s until I guess the early 2020s at this point, the Chevelle just sort of fell out of favour. You'd see a lot of Camaros, a lot of Ford Mustangs, you know, Dodge Chargers, Challengers and such, but the Chevy Chevelle just almost seemed to be absolutely nowhere. Don't get me wrong, it probably was still present, but not in the way, I guess, that I really remember it from the sort of, you know, mid to late 2000s era. So here we are in 2024, and all of a sudden the Chevy Chevelle isn't a standard car anymore, it's a full-blown detailed model, and here it finally is in Gran Turismo 7. And honestly, as much as I complain about polyphony, now the days of sort of standard and premium models are gone, when it comes to sheer amount of details in their car models and attention to detail, they are honestly, in my opinion, the best in the business. And when it comes to the detail in the Chevelle, whether that be the interior, the body, just the absolute perfection detail on this thing, it is just absolutely incredible to just see it in this way. And I feel like I appreciate it even more now after all those years of using it when I was younger in racing games in sort of the PS2 era, to then see it running on a PlayStation 5 in this ridiculous amount of detail, whether in flat or VR. It's just absolutely incredible. So to be honest, props to polyphony when it comes to the detail and the modeling of this car. It's just absolutely incredible. So obviously I've mentioned about the tire compound just not feeling quite right, and I've just said about how beautiful and detailed this car is and how much of a visual treat it is to me personally. Again, one of my favorite all-time American muscle cars. But what is it like to drive from standard, apart from obviously the tires? It's a bit of a strange one. It's a very, very quick car, there is no doubt in that. Once this thing starts putting its power down and it gets the grip, it absolutely rockets. The acceleration on this car is ridiculous to say it's from 1970, and it does go on to reach a rather respectable speed. A lot of the American muscle cars, you'll find they'll top out maybe usually like 130, 135 tops. This thing will quite happily get itself to 150 as standard. That amount of horsepower is not lying. This thing is a ridiculously quick car, especially for the sort of time and era that it comes from. I have the utmost respect for this car. It's insanely quick. So overall, in terms of the performance itself, apart from the tires, it's a very impressive car. Again, the brakes, not too bad. You don't need to expect much from an American muscle car. It's big, it's powerful, it's heavy. Again, braking's not really going to be its strong point. Same again with handling. It feels a bit wibbly wobbly considering how high up this car really sits to today's standard. But to be honest, for just pure driving pleasure, it is absolutely ridiculous, and it is still insanely quick, even to me, for a modern standard on a classic car. I almost feel if polyphony hadn't have put it on the comfort mediums, this would be easily the best standard performance of an American muscle car in the entirety of Gran Turismo 7. It really is that good. But again, don't go and expect a modern day performance and all that stuff. It is still a classic American muscle car. It's big, it's heavy, and as long as you're not thinking along the lines of some ridiculous hypercar, it really does perform well straight out of the box, obviously apart from those tires. So overall, I really don't have much bad to say about this vehicle. I guess if I was being picky, the fact that it's, you know, an automatic transmission, you know, a 3-speed at the fault is a bit annoying, but again, those gears are very, very long, and again, it's an automatic originally, so again, for someone that's using manual, that could be a downside, but again, that is just me being very, very picky to try and find a fault with this car apart from those tires. So with that being said, let's look how it lapped the Nordschleife itself. So on the lap time leaderboard, this car sits in the 500 pp category. A bunch of classic American cars do sit towards the rear end of this one. Now the leader of the classic American cars is still 6th place with the Dodge Charger RT 426 Hemi from 1968, and obviously the Chevelle does come in second, again around about a 10-second gap, which really doesn't do the car justice. But again, note the tyre compound with the CS tyres on the Dodge Charger and the CM on the Chevelle. Again, doesn't really make sense considering the Corvette C1 from 1958 also sits on the comfort mediums, and so does the Plymouth XNR. Again, they're not really in the same league, and I just don't get why polyphony didn't put this on the comfort softs. I feel like it would have been much closer if that was the case. So not really doing it justice. However, we aren't done there. It is time for the Chevelle to make its comeback for the classic American muscle cars. Of course, this car features a ton of upgrades and a ton of tuning potential. It is one of the upsides of classic American muscle cars in Gran Turismo 7. Now, one of the things that I did really like about the Chevelle is the fact that a lot of the cosmetic items really lend to it being a drag car. The rear tyres are absolutely massive, you've got the drag wing, even all of the aero options seem very much like turning this into a drag car. So again, that's the style I went for the lap time at the high speed ring. So it's obviously going to enter the lap, and the main thing you're going to be wondering, what is the natural top speed of this when you have all the upgrades on? It sits at around about 185 to 190 miles per hour, but again, the plus side of these American muscle cars is they will absolutely accelerate out of corners like there's no tomorrow. It's ridiculous. Another plus point of the Chevelle is it felt much more stable fully upgraded than a lot of the other American muscle cars. In fact, I was very surprised just how good this thing is. Again, don't get me wrong, it's nothing like a modern day standard, it still twitches, it still wants to break away, but in terms of stability and hitting the high bankings or, you know, all of that kind of stuff, it felt much better than a lot of the other classic American muscle cars. Again, it seems to really stand out once you start putting those upgrades on, and again, once you start nailing those tyre compounds, getting the suspension right, getting the aero on, it really does make for a very good track car, surprisingly so. For me, this car, when it came upgraded, was absolutely exceeding my expectations. I expected it to be good, but just not quite this good. It feels much more modern and much more performance based than it really has any right to be. So let's see how it managed in terms of its lap time. Again, did it manage to beat the Charger finally fully upgraded, or did it fall flat on its face? And I am pleased to report that when it comes to classic American muscle cars, this thing absolutely is the best of the bunch. It comes overall 17th, which really isn't too shabby considering the amount of modern cars that surround it. It did a time of a 1 minute 8.167, PP rating is 738.13, a little bit less than the likes of the Subaru there, which comes at 739. So it really didn't do a bad job at all for a classic American muscle car. Very good, much better than it really had any right to be. So the Chevy Chevelle SS is finally here in GT7, and I'll tell you what, I'm absolutely over the moon. For me, this car is the saving grace of update 1.46. If it wasn't for this thing, in all honesty, I don't even think I would have bothered with this update. I am massively enjoying this car. Yes, it's a bit heavy on the fuel. Yes, Polyphony just completely butchered the tyre compound as standard, but overall it is a very enjoyable car. For me personally, I'm just so happy to see it back in a modern day racing game, getting the love it absolutely deserves. Anyway, that is going to conclude my update 1.46 car reviews. Thank you for joining me on this journey of reviewing the latest cars to Gran Turismo 7. A big thank you to all of my channel members, and a big thank you to you guys watching at home. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day wherever you are. Take care, guys. Peace.